This episode is brought to you by Act Now Education. Go to www.actnoweducation.com for free comprehensive educational resources and opportunities for active duty, veterans, military spouses, and children.
In the military, you're indoctrinated of teamwork, leadership from day one. When you go through basic training, they put you through the platoon sizes. They're trying to see who the leaders are, because little did we know there's going to be an FTX at the end, and they're going to put the people that's able to influence and motivate people to get stuff done. What I learned from John Maxwell is the law of influence. If you don't have influence, then you can't lead nobody. You don't have to be in a leadership position to lead people. You just need to be able to influence them, have them to buy in, and they will follow you.
Thank you for joining us today, folks. Today we're joined with an Army career warrior. He spent a total of 21 years in the United States Army. 15 of those years were spent as an Army Green Beret. This retired military professional now serves as a project management consultant, project management professional exam trainer, a business owner, a mentor, a coach, a podcaster, and a content marketing producer. Today, I'd like to welcome Mr. Chris McPhee to the show. Thank you for joining me today, sir.
What's up? What's up? Appreciate it. KP, finally. I'm in the formation right now.
The morning formation, right?
The morning formation. Yo, I remember those days. No, this is going to be a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
No, the honor is all mine, sir. I just want to start things out, man. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what was your upbringing like?
Well, I like to take people on a journey, and I know all of you listening have seen or heard of the movie Back to the Future. So we're going to jump in the DeLorean, and I go back in time. Where it all started for me. I'm from Miami, Florida. Grew up there in the city of Dade County in Liberty City, a rough neighborhood in Miami. So everybody sees South Beach, but across the bridge is the real Miami, where all the natives live and where the things are really happening. But over the years, I managed to make it through with a lot of mentors and a lot of guidance and a lot of butt whoopings. And in 94, I graduated high school and joined the military. And I enlisted in the Army in 1994 as a personal admin clerk. Not what I really expected or thought about down the road, what I came out after 21 years. But initially, I wasn't really looking at jumping out of no airplanes. I wasn't looking at going into any type of field type situation. But after about 2 years in the military, all that changed and my perspective changed. And I decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to go and do this. This looks cool. It looks challenging. And I made it. And here the rest is history. Multiple deployments to Afghanistan and Africa and Europe. I'm doing things all over the world, and I retired in 2015. And that was a point of transition for me, which a lot of veterans struggle with or have a hard time with, or even after the initial date, we're still trying to do it some years after. So I would say that I'm still transitioning because I'm still trying to figure out what I really want to do, what really, really makes me tick, what do I really love? And I think I've found that in media. I've found that in project management and mentoring other folks that are transitioning out of military, or they need help with business, or they need help, working on a video or their audio, or they want to start a podcast, or they want to talk about project management. They want to pass the test. They want to skill up. And that's what I like to do, is just help people. I love training. I love learning. And so I figured out, why don't you help people and train and teach and learn? So that's my cycle, and I'm enjoying it. And, that's why I'm here,
Yeah.
So that's a little snapshot, Reader's Digest version.
No, man, you've had a very, very impressive and successful career overall through the military, and even what you're doing right now as far as being a content creator and leveling yourself up. You've accomplished a lot. I mean, just looking at your LinkedIn and knowing you, I'm very honored to actually have you on the show and to be interviewing you right now. And you also helped me out when I first started. You spent a good 2 hours on the phone with me talking to me about things that I should take into consideration. And, I took heed of everything that you said, and it's only helped me out tremendously. So I want to thank you right off the bat for that. But really quickly, I just want to take it back, coming from where you came from. Why exactly did you decide to enlist? Because I'm sure that's probably not the number one most popular thing to have done. Most people and most young adults don't want to join the military. So why did you decide to enlist in the military?
Well, for me, I was in a household with a single mom, and I was the oldest of three boys. So I was wrestling in high school. In South Florida, everybody wants to be the football star. So South Florida is a big football
Oh
community.
yeah,
So we started playing football, grade school, middle school. And if you transition into high school, you might get a gig to go to college and then maybe make it in the pros. So everybody's doing that. I was a little guy, and after a shoulder injury, I realized, I need to wrestle. So wrestling was it, and I had an aspiration of going to college to wrestle, but that didn't happen. And I would say, I was thinking about college, and that's what's so cool about what we have now. If that's not in your household and nobody's putting that in your head, nowadays with the internet and access to education, it's everywhere. So everybody knows, hey, I'm going to college, or there's opportunities for you to get to college, and just not knowing. And I think having more mentorship on that or asking more questions, I might have ended up in college wrestling, but I realized if I wanted to go to college, my mom might not be able to afford it. And I knew friends that were working during college and going to school and wrestling. And I did not want to do that because I did it in high school. I wrestled, I did my homework, and I worked in the evening because, I had to make a little money to bring it into the household and to take care of myself or lessen the load on my mom and do for myself so she could provide those resources that I've been absorbing and give it to my younger brothers. So that was my mindset at that time. So I said, I'll work. And I saw this GI Bill. My uncle was in the Army. And then back then it was like, be all you can be in the Army. The Montgomery GI Bill, we give some college fund. I was like, you know what? That might be something I want to do. So I connected with a recruiter, and luckily he was an admin guy who had been in the 82nd Airborne Division. And he was like, you should go admin.
of course.
And I was like, do they have wrestling in the Army? He's like, yes, they have wrestling in the Army. So that was my hook, right? So I'm like, I could go wrestle in the Army and be a soldier, and I could continue my wrestling career, which I joined to be an admin specialist. But initially I was thinking like, I want to be an engineer because I was into art and architecture. I was a technical guy because I had computer background. So I was like, hey, is there anything in the technical field? And it was like, yeah, you could be a missile, a rocket launcher repairman. And I was like, that sounds like I'm gonna be in the field, so I'm not gonna do that. And then it was like, well, we have this combat engineer, and I was like, is that field work again? He's like, yeah. I was like, nah, I don't think I want to do that. And in the back of my head, my I could hear my recruiters like, man, go admin, go admin. So I was like, what do you have in the admin field? He was like, well, we got this 75 Bravo here, personal admin specialist. And I was like, it had been a long day. I had been in MEPS, and I was like, you know what, let's do this. So I actually enlisted on a delayed entry program. So in my 11th grade year, I enlisted and I was waiting to go. So when I graduated from high school, I already knew I was going to the Army. So 30 days later, after high school, I was at Fort Leonard Wood at basic training, AIT, Fort Benjamin Harrison, first duty station, Fort Riley, Kansas. And shortly after, maybe a year or so, because I had continued wrestling within the community. So everywhere I went, I found a wrestling school, a high school, a club, because I knew they were nationwide just from wrestling to high school. And after meeting with another soldier who was into wrestling, he actually became my mentor and one of my coaches. We volunteer coach wrestling in Junction City, Kansas, there outside of Fort Riley, Kansas, I realized they had this thing called the World Class Athlete Program. So I filled out my application, and lo and behold, PFC McPhee got accepted to the World Class Athlete Program. At that time in 96, it was in Fort Benjamin Harrison. So I got accepted to come to training camp, and I spent about 2 months in training camp, training 3 times a day, nutritionist, weight management, physical training, technique with some of the best wrestlers in the Army. And then also the world-class athlete wrestlers that were already there, cross training with Navy and Marines. They would come in and we'll have tournaments with each other and practice sessions. So yeah, for a good 2-3 months, I was an athlete for the Army. That was my job. But at the time, my girlfriend at the time, who later became my wife, she was pregnant with my daughter. So I had to make a decision. Do I want to chase this Olympic dream? And oh, by the way, it was Olympic year in Atlanta that year. So if I would have stayed my track, which a couple of guys in our camp actually made the Olympic team, and I was one of those guys who had the potential to do it, I chose to be a dad. So I put that on ice. That's why mindset is key. Mindset, it starts upstairs and then, it goes where it needs to go. But if your mind's not into it, it's not going to happen. So automatically my head wasn't there no more. And I was like, I want to go home. And I went home, even after they say, we'll fly you there right when we know, so we were having some issues. So I said, let me go do this because I don't want to have any regrets that I missed my daughter's birth because I was chasing something else and I had a choice to make a decision. So I put that on pause and came back home and then saw the advertisement or the recruitment when I went to back then, which is like the professional development leadership course, which is, I think is like Warrior WLC now, Warrior Leadership Course. So
yeah,
and that's why I saw the recruitment brief to, hey, you want to be a Green Beret? You get this cool hat and you get travel all over the world, different languages, Europe and Asia and South America and Africa, in the Middle East. And I was like, you know what? This sounds exciting. This is the travel part. So I signed up and they also like offering the Ranger School. I was like, oh man, I get to do all this cool stuff. And by that time I had already been to aerosol school, was already airborne qualified. So yeah, there went the jumping out of airplanes thing. I did that about 1.5 years in the Army and sliding down ropes, so the transition in special forces was easy because I realized, because I was an athlete, I didn't know all the tactical stuff initially, but I knew I was an athlete and physically I wasn't worried about not making it. I mean, I knew how to train. I trained at university at the University of Minnesota for summer camp for 30 days when I was a freshman in high school, So that goes to show you at what level of training I was at that age. I was already, a top guy in my state, competing in nationals as a sophomore and freshman in high school. So, the potential was there. Circumstances, life gets in the way, and you have to make choices, and that's what I ended up doing. But redirected, recalibrated. Special Forces was my new Olympic chase. And I chased a lot of things there and helped a lot of people. We did a lot of cool stuff. But no, that's how I got to the Army, took classes at night, still got my education, and finally got my degree about 3-4 years before my retirement because I was like, hey, I'm going to need to get this degree knocked out. Had a lot of education, Army education and life education, but needed to have something to quantify with the civilian workspace as far as being competitive when I transitioned out of the military. So that went there and that's why definitely, the the long version why I joined the Army.
No, it sounds like, man, from the beginning, like even as a kid, you already had that hard work and grit. And it's funny you say that because I wrestled in high school, and I thought that when I played football, two-a-days was it. Like I thought, man, this is the toughest. And then I wrestled, and man, nothing is worse than doing bear crawls, like
Oh
up on a
man.
mezzanine with the heat,
Or running stairs,
running
right?
stairs, and just, I mean, that. And I was explaining to a buddy of mine who's a fellow Marine who has a high schooler. I told him, I said, you need to get your son, his freshman year, I say, you need to get your son involved in wrestling, because it's all about who you surround yourself with. You surround him with, hardworking scholar athletes in high school, he's going to be that way too. And his son, like one day came home and said, hey, Dad, I'm signed up for wrestling his first year. And the kid has gotten A's and B's since then. So I would imagine that your transition and your foundation
Oh yeah.
from the beginning, that's where it kind of all started for you. And man, it seems like from the beginning, you've just been a very thoughtful professional. I mean, thinking about your mom and, understanding that she's not going to be able to afford to go to college. So you got to make this hard right. And then you got to join the military and just work your way up. And you've been a leader since the beginning, Chris. And with that being said, I just wanted to follow up and ask you, during those 15 years as a Green Beret, how many deployments did you actually go on? And what was that like on your family life?
As far as deployments, I did 4 combat rotations to Afghanistan. So right at the beginning of 2002, I was single at the time. I'm glad I was single at the time because what I saw happen to relationships during those first 2-3 deployments, I share something with you. Unfortunately, my teammate, my senior commo guy in our company, Third Special Forces Group, Charlie Company, 2nd Battalion, he committed murder-suicide. He was the first soldier at Fort Bragg when they had the series of suicides and murders going on with guys coming back from deployment. He was the first guy. So that was a hard deployment, the first one. The second one, a little bit more shaky because we had some other guys get shot. And then, I didn't have a family to go home to, but my kids, they were with my ex-wife at the time. So luckily with those operations, I had gotten remarried in 2007 while I was still in SWIC, and my wife was a soldier too. So she, it was still hard. We had one kid in together, and then we have a blended family, so we have 4 kids together. Mm-hmm. And it was hard. It was hard in some instance, but most of the time, those deployments were short, and it was a little bit easier because I wasn't in like direct combat zone.
Right.
So I didn't really feel the stress like some of my buddies I watch go through, the wives, having issue with their wives, or, on both sides. And, I'm gonna be real, both sides of the table, mm-hmm. So infidelity, people get lonely, it's human nature. We're not designed to be apart, especially when you want to be together and you want to be with somebody. Right. It's hard, so for whatever other reasons, people fall into the trap, and that's what happens. People are like, hey, I'm out, or people don't believe in it no more. I mean, I've seen buddies where their wives and girlfriends are just like, I'm out of here, I'm not dealing with this, boom, and just jump ship, but then some dudes just had it coming to him. So that's the reality of it. But I would say, honestly, I didn't really feel that. I just observed it and learned from it and tried to make the best of my relationship when I can.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard life. And that's why I ask, because I know that special forces, they tend to deploy quite a bit, and sometimes it's long, sometimes it's short. So it's something that you definitely have to prepare yourself for. And so just to pivot a little bit, I wanted to find out, How did you use and apply the skills that you developed, while in the military to the civilian world?
Well, I've always been an IT, I would say, closet nerd. In the mid '90s, before I even joined Special Forces. So let's jump into DeLorean. So mid '90s, '97, we have computers coming online, and we're like at 286, 386, right? So this guy is learning how to build and put computers together. So we don't have smartphones, nobody's Zooming, we barely have internet. We have dial-up internet. We barely have internet.
It's hard
So
to imagine, but yeah.
yeah. So about 1999, I got what we call the A+ computer technician certification, and then installing and doing some software. So at that time we had doesn't look nothing like it looks now, but that went on, but that skill helped me in our deployments because in our absence we needed to communicate, and I was a communications, so that was my specialty. I was a communicator. I was an 18 Echo. So since I knew networking and computers, I would network the computers and our SATCOMs and our comms. That was my thing. So I wanted to be an 18 Echo, and so I went through the Morse code. I learned Morse code at the time we were doing Morse code, and in '99 when I was going through the Special Forces qualification course, and as I got closer to retirement and looking at retirement, I was like, well, what can I do when I transition? Okay, I got computer skills, security skills that would transition to be like a super cool cop or some type of security consultant or something in the security world. And by that time, a lot of contracted security companies were available. So I could have ventured off to do that. But the other part I learned was becoming an intel analyst and diving into the intelligence realm of the combat zone and the battlefield. And so once I got that craft under my belt, and when you become a senior, so I retired as a master sergeant. So, and this is the delta between leadership, what I've learned in the military, and what's in the civilian workspace. When you take another rank, you get a class, or you go to a course to teach you how to be the best at that. That's not in the civilian space. A lot of people out there that I've worked with, they're just in those positions based off of time and because of what school they have, but they're not good leaders. And what I've learned through being in the John Maxwell Network is that what the leadership I learned in the military is not going to transition over to the civilian space. That now what I've learned and the principles and the techniques of welfare for people, motivating, inspiring, mentoring, counseling, those things I learned, but like there's less time for conferencing and huddles. When you're getting bullets shot at you, go that way. Come with me.
Mm-hmm.
There's no time for conferencing, but that's what happens in the workspace. Somebody says something and it's like, well, we should do this. Well, I don't think we should do this. And you spend like an hour bickering over what you should do versus, hey, let's just get it done. And that's what I saw when I initially transitioned. I would say the leadership in a lot of organizations is weak. I'm gonna just say it on the record because I can. I'm just real. That's why I'm an entrepreneur. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I work in my own organization. That's why I only team with other elite executives and operators in their business
Mm-hmm.
to give them that high level performance. Because when you're used to operating at an optimal level coming out of the military, it's hard to go into some cubicle. You can't just undo being, a go-getter. In the military, you're indoctrinated of teamwork, leadership from day one. When you go through basic training, they put you through the platoon sizes. They're trying to see who the leaders are, because little did we know there's going to be an FTX at the end, and they're going to
Right.
put the people that's able to influence and motivate people to get stuff done that they like. So what I learned from John Maxwell is the law of influence. If you don't have influence, then you can't lead nobody. You don't have to be in a leadership position to lead people. You just need to be able to influence them, have them to buy in, and they will follow you. And especially in the workplace, a lot of people just want to come in, punch their clock, get their money, and go back to do whatever, because maybe they hate their job. They don't like it. And that's when I really started pursuing my company, Green Beret Media, and getting into media and photography because I loved it. I liked it. I also had another business where I was doing government contracting on the side. So I just got tired of doing that, and I started diving more into the project management side of industry, and it allowed me to teach. And once I figured it out, because in the military, I learned planning, the 5-paragraph op order. You learn how to plan a mission. Like if you go and do a training event, there's a plan for that. If you got to go get water, there has to be a plan for that. For every airborne operation, there's a plan for that. For where we sit in on the aircraft, there's a plan for that. There's a plan for everything. So that was easy for me to transfer into project management. The hard part was the lexicon and learning the lingo. But once I learned the lingo and made the correlation between the two, I was like, oh, I got this. And I ran with it. I became the expert in my organizations. I helped everybody. Once again, I was leading from the front, influencing, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. So I got promoted really quick to a lead analyst. So I trained people on stateside. So when we got abroad, life would be easy for us, because when you're in the game, there's no time for training, So I did that, and then after a while, I was like, I'm moving on, and I did some freelance contracting for a while, and then I said, let me getting the second job was more of a strategy, and I really developed a keen sense that one of my friends, and I'm gonna give him a holler. His name is Rod Rodriguez, and that's where I got my podcast mentorship from. And we worked together in Kuwait. And one day we were walking, and he said, it was another gentleman walking with us, and he was like, "Man, this is good money, man. We gotta chill out, man." And Rod's like, "I want more, man. Like, there's more to life than this. It's just going to the DFAC, working 12 hours, go to sleep for 12 hours, come back, and you do the same cycle for 6 months on this camp. You can't go nowhere." And he's like, "No, man." He said, right, "I'm guaranteed money, not the 9 to 5. And I looked at him, and he had this look on his face like, you know what? Man, I would just punch you in your mouth right now. You just don't know how I feel." But I heard that, and I looked at him, and later on I was like, "Rod, man, guaranteed money, like, explain it to." He's like, "Look, Chris, like, the 9 to 5 needs us. And anybody listening to this right now, unless you own that company doesn't operate without you. All right? Let's change the dynamics a little bit. The company needs you to function, to operate, to grow. If you're not bought in on the mission, the vision, then you're just spinning your wheels waiting for another opportunity. And you probably hate that job. So if you hate that job, that's where you're at. You're not bought into the mission. You're not influenced by it. You're just collecting a paycheck. Or you're just doing it because you got a side hustle and you're ready to transition. Like I said, you're looking for the next thing, right? Because people who are bought into the vision, the mission, and they're drinking the Kool-Aid, they're trying to climb the ladder, right? So they love their job, right. Or maybe they really genuinely love their job and they just like doing that task at that job. But for me and a lot of people out there, we want more. We want to have our own business. We want to do this. We want to travel. We want to do this, but there's constraints. But you got to understand that the 9 to 5 needs you. So don't feel that there's scarcity. If you got skills, planning skills, communication skills, IT skills, management skills, the more skills you have, the less there is a mindset of scarcity, right? I could go work, I could leave right here, right now, go on LinkedIn and probably apply to 10 jobs and get 3. Sometimes I just apply to a job just to go through the interview, just
Hmm.
to see where I'm at. And I don't even take it. So I really don't have there's no scarcity of work for me. Like I could get a job, but no,
Yeah.
that's how I see things, man.
Yeah.
Just holistically, my mindset is the more skills you have, that's how you defeat scarcity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. You've been practicing adapting and overcoming ever since you were a kid. And nothing from where you came from to, wrestling at a highly competitive level, as a teenager, adapt and overcoming. And then you practice it in the military as well, switching from human resources to special operations. And it's something that you're still practicing today. So I completely understand why you have no problems betting on yourself, because you've challenged yourself and you've bet on yourself before, and you come out on top every single time, Chris. And that's what's amazing about you.
Once I realized that with building relationships and interacting and engaging people, especially now in social, and you have to be a leader and you have to drive engagement, and you have to know how to, like Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. I had to learn that in when I became a real estate agent, because I didn't know how to sell as a salesman as an adult, and I didn't know how to sell real estate. They taught me how to do it, but they didn't tell me how to sell it. So that's where I learned a lot of books. At that time, this was 2006. I wasn't a big reader, like for pleasure. It was just more for technical reading, like how to do my job, right? So I never read, only if I had to. But now I had to, but I had to learn about storytelling and setting up teams, and this is how you set up teams out here, and this is how you do this is how you market, this is how you meet people, this is how you market yourself. Before the internet, or before social, one thing they told us how to connect with people and build community was you wore your name tag everywhere you went. So if you went to Home Depot, if you went to any event, to your school, all these what they call sphere of influences. Now that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Those are new digital spheres of influence, but pre-social media as we have it now, that was the school at the PTA. That was you
Mm.
volunteering at Boy Scouts. That was you
Mhm.
being the guy in your neighborhood waving at everybody, or that was you picking up the phone, cold calling. We used to do that, dialing for dollars. I used to do that. I used to cold call people. Hey, you ever thought about selling your house? Blah, 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 blah. No, click. Next one,
Yeah.
click, click. Go in the doors. Nope.
Yeah.
Like that's why I say, people, and I'm gonna just put it out there. These are tools, and you still have to interact with people on these tools, right? I had no clue this internet thing was like this,
Right.
because I was living under a rucksack running operations, and I knew about Facebook and YouTube, but I didn't know how to use it. And
Hmm.
LinkedIn was the first social media platform I learned how to
Right.
use, because I was a professional and I wanted to get in the professional space. So I focused on that. And then I learned about Facebook and Instagram. And then I got into photo and video and realized social media, and for branding, for me, it's the same thing. It's about building a relationship. That's why I started the podcast. I didn't start it to monetize it. And I'm gonna just say it. All this hoopla everybody's listening to out there, unless you're a big name like Joe Rogan. Like I watched Joe Rogan as a kid on Double Dare. I've seen Joe Rogan as a stand-up comic. And if you haven't been following Joe Rogan since like the 80s, it didn't happen overnight. It's not a coincidence that his
Yeah.
podcast is the bomb. No, Joe Rogan's the bomb. And Joe Rogan started a podcast. So Joe Rogan says a lot of stuff, and Joe Rogan already had a following.
Right.
It was like, well, shoot, if you want to listen to Joe Rogan, you got to get on this podcast because he's off the chain. That's how Joe Rogan podcast is the heat, not because he just started it and he does all these cool things. Like, so when I hate to say it, when nobody knows you, that's hard for you. It's hard to get listeners. It's hard to try to monetize. I tried to do that and realized like I didn't want to be a slave to sponsorship because you got to produce. They're expecting you to sell their brand and sell their product. I'm like, nah.
Right.
That's like working a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I
think for people like Joe Rogan, it's definitely been a journey.
Yeah, it is.
And a journey is long. And a lot of folks today want the really quick, hey, I want something to happen tomorrow. And so I understand what you're saying with that.
You really don't, you literally don't have to go overboard, but the market has created this facade with all this tech.
Yeah.
And that's what I've come to, just like I said at work, I realized the 9 to 5 needs me. And I realized that I really don't need all that to do a podcast. Like,
right. Exactly right. I mean, everything that you just mentioned, every single show that I do, I learn something new, and I try to do it better each and every time. And you really had a huge effect on, my podcasting and my show. And I just want to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
You're an absolutely amazing professional. A lot of your content that's out there. If anyone listening is interested in connecting with you or following you on any of your platforms, would you mind mentioning how they can do that?
Yes. The easiest way to find me is go to Google or any platform and hashtag I'm your camera guy, right? So that's the easiest way. But anything, if you find me on Facebook, it's Chris McPhee PMP. On LinkedIn, you could find me Chris Smurf McPhee. I'm there. Or if you throw in I'm your project manager. You see where we're going with that?
Mm-hmm.
That's my URL. So anything, linkedin.com/ I'm your project manager is a quick way to find me. But yeah, anywhere, if you just Google me, you will see all my hits. You'll see the podcast. You'll see the YouTube channel. You see anything I put on Facebook, anything that I've been connected with, you'll be able to see that.
Most definitely. Anyone listening out there, make sure you follow this man. His journey is continuing, even though he's retired out of the military. He's pivoted so many times, adapted and overcame. He's got a lot of big things in the works. And so, Chris, I really appreciate your mentorship, man. You helping me out early on. You definitely talked a lot of sense into me, and you got me to where I am today. So thank you for that.
No, man, that's the key. I think, I learned, like you say, well, what did I learn in the military? Transition, the crawl, walk, run method, right? So you got to crawl a little bit, figure stuff out, what works, boom, boom, boom. You pick it up a little bit, you start walking. And then once you feel you get it, then you start running. But if you jump out the gate, it's always going to be like your hair's on fire,
Right.
It's going to always feel that way.
Right. Yeah. Well, Chris, is there anything you'd like to tell everyone before we sign off of the show?
Well, I would like to leave your guests with, I've been reading Robert Greene's Mastery, and I would challenge you to take advantage of the protege-mentor relationship. Find somebody. If they're a real mentor and you want to be a real protege, it shouldn't cost you anything but time. So if you're paying for it, that's not a mentor, that's a coach. Right?
Yeah.
It's a difference. So real mentors, and I have many of them for different things in my life. It doesn't cost you because they know you and they genuinely want to help you, right? Coaches want to help you, but that's their business, right? That's their business, is to coach people, because people need coaching. But some mentorship is different, Sometimes you got to get your hand held a little bit, or somebody needs to talk to you a certain way, and only your mentor who knows you could talk to you like that.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate your time today. And for the folks listening out there, if you want to link up with Chris, I'm going to make sure that his links are in the show notes. Chris, thank you for your time today.
Appreciate it, KP, man. Thank you for the morning formation. I'm in it. I get to fall out now.
yeah. Actually, that early on, that was part of my outro was fall out. And people were like, "What's that mean?" And because the Navy says something different, the Air Force says something different. I don't know. So
I know, okay. Right? I know.
But thank you everyone for listening today for the morning formation. I'm KP with Chris, and we're out. You've been listening to the Morning Formation Podcast. I hope you found today's materials helpful and of value to your current situation. You can connect with me on Instagram at the_morning_formation_podcast, or you can connect with me via email at theformationpodcaster@gmail.com. Also, I would like to thank my partners at Act Now Education for their support. Authenticity, community, and trusted is what you can expect from all members of the Act Now Education team. You can link up with them today and learn about some new free educational resources on their Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or at their website, actnoweducation.com. Whether today's show took you back to a nostalgic time or helped you think about tomorrow, thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you again. Stay safe and stay motivated. Warriors, fall out.